opinions registered, let's talk about startups and engaging youth and women in business. The moderator for this session is Ms. Prachi Agarwal, who is the immediate past president of the CNI-YEF. She implements a solid understanding of financial issues through high academic achievements and a strong interest in the topic. Along with her, I would like to invite our panelists on stage. Mr. Suman Rayamaji, Ms. Shavona Shrestha, Mr. Raj Gewali, Mr. Manoj Paudel, Ms. Nigita Rajbhandari. Can we please have you all on stage? Let's have a round of applause for all our panelists and our moderator. I would also like to invite, and it's my great honor to invite, Her Excellency Rina Rekha Heka, Ambassador of Finland to Nepal, as she will be reflecting on the entire session. Can we have a round of applause for her as well, please? It's an honor to have her here with us. To commence this session and to set the context to understand the topic much better, I would now like to request our special speaker to please come up on stage. He is Mr. Rajendra Khetan, the Honorary Consul of Portugal to Nepal, the Chairman of Lakshmi Bank and Prime Life Insurance, and the President of Nepal-Britain Chamber of Commerce and Industries. Can we have him on stage with a big, warm round of applause as he makes his opening comments on this entire topic? Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Once again, good morning. Breakfast was good, it seems. Hi, everybody. It was in 2005, Hong Kong, when the round of WTO was being negotiated after Doha. The Korean farmers were swimming in the Simsasway to Causeway Bay side to disturb and raise their voice on WTO. All the governments were talking about replacing from aid to trade. I think that's how the word startup, the word venture capitalism, venture capital, the word youth empowerment through businesses started. The world has reached a long way, and nowhere in the world these words have not spelled out in terms of results. In Nepal, we are doing it in two terms. Those who don't want to get in trouble with a regulating authority, they do it through FDI. And again, when it comes through FDI, they want to avoid double taxation, so it comes through either Mauritius or Seychelles or maybe Gibraltar or somewhere. And the fund remains there, it comes here, and then again goes back and to and fro. The other way to do this is through SEBON, which is a regulatory body of Nepal, Security Exchange Board of Nepal. I'm a partner into almost 4 startup companies. One of my partners is here, Adinta. I have our one company called Lakshmi Capital, Global Equity Fund, and under which there is a direct investment company called Infrastructure Fund Nepal. And now Sidwick is another one being started by Neeraj Giriji, who has been a very long-standing merchant banker and regulator of Nepal. Now, not taking a long time, let me just spell out a few things. As you know, there has been a reform into doing business in Nepal, especially related to investment forum. The word startup has become buzzword for the government too. But while this is happening, what is not happening is the central bank, other regulatory bodies, which is controlling certain segments that has a huge fund that are not bankable in the market. For example, my one bank has billions of rupees idle. We want to see that a young entrepreneur, a woman entrepreneur, a youth entrepreneur who has just come back from United States, Europe, they have some skill, knowledge, know-how, zeal to work. ambition, and patriotic feeling that I want to do something in my motherland. They need some technology. They need market access. They need support. They need enhancement. They need moral boosting, and they need some fun. We all are ready. But when my bank gives money to an investment company or an equity fund, maybe I would be made provision to in my balance sheet, because of which my liability goes 2 times. So is government taking it very seriously? Are regulators very flexible? When they are committing so much, why not a single word that it need not to be provisioned? Single, 2 lines, 2 words. That will be allowed. I tell you, I promise you, more than 10 billion rupees to come to the startup segment. Now, these 20 companies who has come through SEBON, Security Exchange Board of Nepal, and 10 other companies who are directly coming through either FDI or managing local funds, these 30 companies are very capable. They are people who really know how to do startup businesses. I have seen, I have felt, I know, and I can promise that there are thousands and thousands of young entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs who are compassionate and passionate about what they can do. But out of 4 or 5 things, either market access or technology or operational support or finance or some support, mental support, they have one particular or 2 particular qualities. They need 2, 3 other qualities to be added. Or maybe they have 4, they need 1 to be added. So we, the venture capitalists, need to go there, talk to them, we'll need to take care of it and support them. And this can happen today. This can happen today itself now. And already there is a more than 5-7 billion. Now, how much have the equity market in the market? Almost 5 billion? 30 billion they're raising. Yeah, 30 billion is being raised now. It can go multifolds because this is more secure. It's a preference share. There's no liability on your head as a paying interest every quarterly. And for us, in premium, after 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, I can get rid of it and go to the new project. And the IPO market will grow. So there is a win-win for everybody. So what is stopping it? Probably 2 words. It need not to be provisioned. Thank you all. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khaitan, for setting the context and for really opening this session in a very meaningful way. I'm sure that this is going to allow us to think and to be more immersed as we go into the session. Over to you, Prachi.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rajendra sir. That was very insightful. I'd like to start now. In a realm where dreams take flight, amidst the tapestry of innovation's might, startups emerge with courage unfurled to shape the future in a changing world. Startups are the heartbeat of innovation, driving economic growth and job creations globally. Behind every startup, there's a passionate team daring to defy the startup quo and carve a path towards a brighter future. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to introduce such startup leaders to you today. Please welcome Mr. Suman Raimaji, a managing director of Upaya, a technology-enabled logistic company. He has worked in the corporate, telecom, startup, equity, and financial sectors in Nepal. Upaya's vision is to become the logistic backbone of digital Nepal. As Chief Financial Officer at Smart Telecom, he was responsible for launching 4G connectivity in major cities of Nepal and raised funds for network expansion. He has attended negotiation courses in deal making at the Harvard Negotiation Institute. We are glad to have you here. Please let's welcome Ms. Savona Shrestha. She has tried out multiple businesses and currently runs 2. Dav's Enterprise that imports and distributes Italian foods and produced from Dwarika's eco-organic farm, and the other is Jijivisha Private Limited, a luxury clothing brand made in Nepal. Jijivisha focuses on sustainability by using all natural fibers and dyes, all crafted by hand. We're glad to have you here too. Please let's welcome Mr. Raj Kewali. He has over 2 decades of experience in responsible tourism. His company, Social Tours, is the first tour company in Asia to be sustainably certified. Mr. Kewali is an expert in responsible, which means eco-sustainable, conscious, ethical, mindful tourism and destination development with a green economy ethic. So happy to have you here. Let's welcome Ms. Nikita Rajbhandari, a tech entrepreneur and humanitarian innovator, co-founded Zeit, a cutting-edge project management platform that revolutionizes real-time decision-making with data. With over 8 years of experience in development agencies like UN, OCHA, UNOPS, and IFRC, she brings extensive expertise in leveraging technology for impactful solution. Through Zeit and beyond, Nikita advocates for inclusivity and innovation, driving positive change in tech landscape and beyond. She's also an executive committee member and learning chair at NYEF Lalitpur chapter. So happy to have you. We also have Mr. Manoj Paudel. He is the chairperson of the Investment and International Affairs Forum at FNCCI. He is leading Adhyanta, a private equity venture capital platform promoted by the government and private commercial bank. Mr. Paudel holds a MSc degree from the London School of Economics. So that's our panel for today, young startup leaders of Nepal. I'd like to begin the session with my first question to Mr. Suman Raimaji. Sumanji, over 40% of Nepal's population falls in the youth category, about 16 to 14 years. Each year, about 5 lakh people enter the job market, and many of them are now heading abroad. Can you, with your experience in startup, dwell on your startup ventures in Nepal, and what can be done to retain these young force in Nepal, given the increasing number of young people seeking opportunities abroad?
Hello. Thank you, Prachi. And thanks for having me here. Just to give you a brief background about Upai, it's been 5 years. We started with a tech company, which is in logistics. Now, last 2 years back, we pivoted and made a full stack logistic company, which is now enabled by technology and infrastructure. Looking at the growth of Upai, so we've grown a lot. We started with a team of, it was only 5 to 10 people. Now we are a team of 140 people spread pan across Nepal, right, all across Nepal. Like what you said, right now, and lately, it's just been 6 months or like even more. We've seen almost like 30, 35 people leaving the organization. Not because there's nothing wrong with the organization as such, because we are growing. The environment is pretty good. The average age of the team that we have, I'm on the other side. The average team is almost like around 25, 26, right? The average age. So, but what has actually happened is, it's more rather than to see in terms of the startup as such, but it's the political scenario and the economic scenario that's making these youth leave. They don't see future here, despite of the fact that there are companies where they can work, they can get a work-life balance, they get a good pay also. But, and these youth, which is basically a graduate plus, is what is moving out of Nepal, and that's alarming. Earlier, it was more of a migrant labor who used to go out. They used to earn, come back, send the money here, and that's where the remittance has always been a major source of revenue in this country, where it's almost like 25% of the GDP. But now with these graduate people going out, they would want to seek their future in that particular country itself. If they scale well, they would want to buy a house there, and if possible, even sell the house here in Nepal and bring their money there and pursue their career and lifestyle in other countries. And that's alarming. Something has to be done at this point of time, else another 5 years or 10 years down the line, you'll barely see youth here. Despite of the fact that there are good startup companies or good young companies growing up, that would be an issue. Now, to answer your question in terms of how do you retain this, right? Key is the job opportunity here. And the job opportunity, now when you say job opportunity, where does it fall back? Is like, how many startup companies can grow like what Upaya has been growing? Like, we're still struggling. And when I looked at the poll early in the session. So all you see is the biggest challenge is raising the finance, and that's what our speaker also said. Mr. Ketan also said, like, startups or the young companies don't have access to finance. We can't go to a bank, right? There are PE VC company which has just started. 30 billion is what the figure we're talking about. Now, can at least a 10% be allocated to these particular ecosystem? Else, that 30 billion will again go back to another stable company, hydropower companies, and that's where the issue would be. And on the other side, we'll just be left high and dry. And if that's the case, then again, these companies would not be able to thrive, which means that again, the youth is going to go out. And that's the challenge that we are actually facing. Looking at, and I'm also not only giving the perspective purely from a startup perspective. Also, when you look from a purely VC or a private equity perspective, it's also the first time fund manager here. Like, we are being backed up by Dolma. They have a purely VC approach. But when you look at Nepal, okay, there's private equity, there are banks, but are there any VCs here? I would barely say no. Like, and we need VCs because VC can only understand what the entrepreneur thinks. Because at the first of the time, when you start up something, you don't have a revenue. You don't have a good operation as such. At that point of time, the only thing that you see is the person, the team, and the capability. Will that person be able to do it? Like when you go back in 2005 in US or Europe, right? All these tech entrepreneurs or startup entrepreneurs who build the empire at this point of time, were that one person or the team that they had, and that's what the VC had believed in, and that's where they actually backed up. Now that's what is lacking, and not only, because PE only looks at a growth scale company, but we need a VC in this country which can actually help the entrepreneurs or the young startup to grow, and that's where if they grow, because the numbers which the job creation that we're talking about, like in all this company put together, it'll all run into 200, 300, 400, right? Good part is like when you look at a foreign startup company like Daraz or Patao or InDrive coming in, right? They have a good team, right? But what they don't need to look at is they don't need to look at funding, because somewhere out there in the world, globally, somebody is taking care of that. They don't need to look at the technology because they've got a global team which looks after the technology side. But in case of our local entrepreneurs and the local people who want to do something, we need to take care of the technology, we need to take care of the fund, and we need to also take care of the operation. And where the founder major time goes around is finding that money so that they can build that company. And that's where is a big gap, and which relates to the youth going out. And if we can address this particular issues somewhere purely from a reform perspective, regulated perspective, that's another where audience all think that, okay, it's another second point which is very crucial to make this ecosystem grow, because it's the first time Nepal is moving on that. We're pretty late. 2005-4 was what Europe and US did it. 2009, 10, 11 was where India, China grew, right? We are in 2022, 23, 24 is where we just started talking about startup and all this ecosystem. We're not so late as such, but it's time to everybody to come together and build this ecosystem together.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful answer. Access to funds, letting the local startups grow, having venture capitalists. These are a few things that we definitely need here at this point of time. And I truly believe what you said. Following the same question, I would like to ask Ms. Shrestha, you've tried hands-on on many businesses yourself and have 2 running at this point of time. Can you share any pivotal moments or lessons learned from your journey of navigating the startup ecosystem in Nepal, and what has shaped your approach in entrepreneurship?
An honor and pleasure to be here right now. Thank you, Prachi, for the question. I was 18 when I started my own business, and I was one of the very few who did not leave the country at that time. It was important for me to create something in Nepal. I started various businesses. I was into importing, I was into education consultancies, and I was into clothing. But everything of that had something in common. It was not fulfilling. I was promoting other people's brand and product. Personally, I believe in creating, I believe in uplifting, making a difference, adding value. You know, that is the time when I thought about Gigi Visha, to promote the Nepalese craftsmanship by producing luxury items, which is of an international level, made by the local artisans. This is where I started, and I really want to prove that Nepal can succeed internationally now and inspire the youths to have a mindset to develop a mindset to start thinking, to start to compete internationally now and not just nationally. And I also wish to I wish to create jobs that pays well, so that we retain our youths and they can stay back in the country with their families. And these are the biggest lessons I've taken from my entrepreneurial journey. It's just not about starting a business and making money, it's about creating opportunities in Nepal.
Thank you so much. What you said is what Nepal needs. We need to succeed globally. For every youth listening today, you must know that these are the examples they've set for us. If they've stayed back in our country, even you can, and we can take Nepal to a global level. Following to that question, I would like to now come to Mr. Gewali. You've been an expert in tourism industry yourself. How do you think startup and tourism can be aligned? And how do you think government support can best benefit investment-driven startups in Nepal? And how can tourism retain all these people back in Nepal?
Thanks, Prachi. I'll go with my own experience, because after the pandemic, of course, as a tourism entrepreneur, had nothing to do, really. You know, had too much time in my hands, but then we started designing a pivot around tourism, working on a software that actually helps small tour operators get better bookings. And this is a startup that I just started, and navigating through the space of exactly what have been discussed before, of access to finance, taking care of everything, only driven by passion. This is my first experience on actually doing a startup myself. But the difference here is that our startup is actually global, right? So we've started this from Norway, and I think through this journey, if I explain a few things that have happened in the journey, I think there'll be enough examples for where the government can actually, catalyze, better investments in the startup scene. So Stomp, my startup, is actually a software, and we launched this using a fund from Norway. And so just after the pandemic, the government in Norway realized very quickly that crisis is the mother of invention. And they put in over $600 million into an innovation fund that could be applied through people who are innovators. But it had very strict conditions. It was not just open for everything. Very clearly, it needed to have some sustainability in it, had to employ a certain number of people, had to have certain goals, right? And within that, then they were very easy with the money. So they were very happy to give it on an 80-20 principle, right? So here's an example for what needs to be done. So we got $20,000 from that to kickstart this, to do the study, to kickstart it, and put 20% of our own, and it is a grant, right? We have a lot of money in this country that can be given out for innovation and to create that environment. So here's one thing that could have been done. Now, beyond that, of course, we've now got the software done. It's being used, and now we're at the growth and expansion stage. And though our burnout rate is very low, we're slowly reaching the valley of death. I mean, these are startup terms that I'm getting to learn, where if you don't get the next round of funding, you'll probably just go under or disappear at some point. So recently, of course, we started applying, starting to show our startup in the startup scene here. And in the last, you know about it, Prachi, that we actually got shortlisted and got 3 letters of interest. So the money exists, like Mr. Rajendra said. The money was there, 100 crores was there. And we were asking for $500,000, which is 5 crores, a little over 8 crores or something like that. And that's all we were asking for. And we had 3 interests for sure. But here's the thing. Nepalis cannot invest abroad. Yeah, so this is a big problem. So the government does not allow for foreign currencies to get out. So we either have to look for people with parked money outside, or do it through other channels, you know. So that is one angle that, again, is some sort of reform that the government should probably put in, so that even, you know, if there's even a limit, it doesn't have to be $3 trillion going out. It can be, you know, a little bit of money going out, which actually generates, with very clear conditions, that it generates enough money that comes back, then it can actually start happening. So there are regulatory reforms that are probably required within that, which will allow for investments to happen. The third thing that I discovered was, just like Mr. Rajendra said, as a person who's doing, an innovator who's doing a startup, you're running by passion, and you've got 1 or 2 qualities very strongly within that. And in our case, it was the ideation and the software part. And we knew exactly what we were doing out there. But what we didn't know was the regulatory framework around it, how to go about making a pitch deck, how to go about, you know, finding the right investor, you know. So there's a lot of hand-holding that is required. So the BDS, the business development support that is required for an innovator is really crucial. Now here's the thing. I mean, if you open up a business or, you know, start any sort of venture anywhere in Europe, you're automatically assigned a lawyer and a financial expert for a certain number of hours. It's a very simple thing, and it really pays dividends for the government. So you don't really start ridiculously stupid businesses, right? So you actually are trained, you're handheld a little bit. With the amount of money that is floating around in Nepal with the government and donor aid, we should be able to create a very robust hand-holding mechanism. And if that hand-holding mechanism can come in, then I'm sure a lot more innovators would get the opportunity. They would fit some of the things that they can do, but the rest of it would come through this support system. So that's another thing that the government can definitely do, right? Now, in the tourism scene, which is where I am, I also feel very strongly now, having done a little bit of consultancy work in the far west and in Nepal and abroad, that what Nepal really requires is to stop talking only about saying that tourism is the potential, to actually making it happen, right? We keep on saying that tourism is the potential, tourism is the potential, tourism is the potential for Nepal, but nobody is actually making the effort to actually make it happen. And I think it can be very simple, as Rajendra Khaitan said. Some things are very, very simple. All it takes is for every project that we have in Nepal, any infrastructure project, any development project, any investment project, to have a tourism angle to it. All it requires is a tourism filter. If you don't have a tourism filter, we'll not develop anything. Even if you are training manpower, we need a tourism filter. If you are training investment people, we need a tourism filter. If you're building roads, you'd need a tourism filter. Just to give you an example of what that would mean, is that if we had a tourism filter, the road to Pokhara would not be being done right now in the tourism season. Or it would be done by the time tourism, people arrived. Or the forest fires would not have gone off. Yeah, we'd not allow that to happen because the tourism filter would not allow that. So while we have inclusion filters, we have got environment filters, we've got all these other filters, we don't have a tourism filter, and yet we say Nepal will be lifted by tourism. I think we're getting it wrong out here. To answer the next part of the question, so I gave you a few things which can possibly be done by the government as a solution. I think the next part of the thing is about retention of jobs. And for me, I see tourism as the high potential on that as well. Because if you look at the tourism value chain, especially in a country like Nepal and the type of tourism that we do, everything is rural. Tourism does not happen in the cities here. It happens in rural areas. So if we actually get into the value chain of agriculture, of manpower, of the guest houses, of all the people that tourism employs, the standard saying is that one tourist employs about 8 to 12 people. So if we make sure that these people are trained, we will retain far more jobs. But The other thing that needs to be done is that we need to grow Nepal's tourism up a little bit from the $42 per day tourists right now to much more. Otherwise, we'll never retain the people because they'll earn more in the Gulf than they will get from a tourism job. So it is a two-pronged thing. One is training, but also uplifting the tourism. And if we do that, then people actually will earn more. And I think most Nepalese would be quite happy to eat good dal bhat at home and earn a better, earn a better living. The unfortunate thing is we only talk about training up cooks and guides, and that too at a very low level. So they will not earn enough. So that way we'll never go forward. So if we uplift the tourism and actually train people up at a different level. So on that note, again, a government initiative could be that every province should have some sort of a BDS Center of Excellence, which actually keeps on training, learns. The provinces start learning from it. And actually, this is also one of the recommendations that we are right now making on an investment suggestion for Sudur Paschim, that it should have a center of excellence where people are not just learning about chefs and cooks and housekeeping, but business, marketing, the whole lot that is really required to take things forward. And if we create those environments, I think the startup scene will really move up much faster and make it more investment ready.
That was an amazing answer. One thing that you said will stay by me is crisis is the mother of innovation. If we say Nepal is in crisis at this point of time, that means there is a potential of innovation. And like we all know, there's a lot of money here. So we can make the use of all that innovation. You also spoke about handholding and about investments. So I'll touch upon the investment later, but I would like to go to Ms. Nikita Rajbhandari and speak about handholding. You are an executive member of NYEF yourself. So could you elaborate on the role of NYEF in addressing challenges faced by startups in Nepal and access to investment and mentorship opportunities? If you can dwell on some facts about women leadership.
Thank you, Prachi. Before I speak about NYEF and how we basically support the startup ecosystem, I would like to give a small brief about what NYEF is for the audience to know. We are Nepalese Young Entrepreneurs Forum, a community of young entrepreneurs and business leaders. We have a nationwide presence in all the 7 provinces. We have 13 chapters and over 800 plus members. I think these are not just numbers. This itself sort of like is a testament of how large the community is and how big this sort of business leaders group is, right? So yeah, I mean, we are constantly trying to sort of organize different events, be it boot camps or investment opportunities or learning events for all of our members, as well as our collaborators and partners outside of NYEF in order to sort of like create an entrepreneurial landscape. To like pick out a couple of events that we organize at NYEF. There's this program we are doing with Stanford Seed program, where business leaders from within the NYEF circle, we volunteer our time as mentors for all of these participants that participate in the program. So this is one very important, crucial program that we have been partnering with. Similarly, we are also organizing in-house sort of programs for all of our young leaders. So we organize learning events. This happens on a regular basis, like on month-on-month basis. We invite influential speakers, business leaders from different sort of background, and delve on topics related to legal frameworks or taxation or, different kinds of capacity building and skill development sort of trainings for our members. We have also recently started scaling our programs out to universities and colleges. So recently we did a program with King's College where we partnered with the students there in their consulting program, where they come and become a consultant for these business leaders and then provide a 2-month-long program where they also get an idea of what the real sort of business scenario is and working with real business people. And then we also learn from their sort of expertise and young ideas. In terms of like how we are trying to sort of grow the women sort of entrepreneurial ecosystem, we have a flagship event, which is a national event that NYF does every year. It's called YesW, which is Young Entrepreneur Summit Women. This is a summit that is basically chaired by women members. So all of the chairperson of the event are also women, and mostly the team is also the women organizing this, right? And this event basically focuses on making sure we highlight the entrepreneurial ecosystem of women members. We sort of like recognize their achievements. And I personally also am a big believer and advocate of recognition and representation. I mean, I'm here representing NYF today as a tech entrepreneur and an executive member of NYF. This itself is a testament of how we're trying to sort of like grow the leadership position within NYF. So similarly, if we talk about leadership positions at NYEF, the current president of the NGC, National Governing Council, that looks after the entire fraternity is Ms. Sahara Joshi, which is also a very strong, women leader. Similarly, other chapters also have been sort of like appointing women members as executive committee members and presidents. So basically, we're trying to sort of like shift and change the male-centric leadership structure and trying to be more inclusive in terms of, inviting more women members to take like leadership roles. And basically occupy space. So these are a couple of sort of programs that we have been doing within NYF in terms of, promoting the youth entrepreneur sort of landscape, as well as helping women to sort of represent and become like role models and examples for young leaders, to sort of like motivate and encourage to do better in the businesses. So yeah, we are constantly trying to take feedback from everybody as well in terms of improving, how we can work around. We are really open to partnering and collaborating. If anybody wants to come and, speak to me later during the networking session, I'm available here. And yeah, I hope we can start creating a better sort of ecosystem for young leaders within Nepal. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikita. I believe women are empowered in today's time, and they can take up leadership roles, and you guys are a great example of that yourself. I would now like to put my another question to Mr. Manoj Paudel. I had another question for you in mind, but in regards to Mr. Rajgewali's answer, I would like to ask you another question first. So in the startup ecosystem, we often hear about investors committing to startups, but not following through with actual investments. Like Mr. Gewali mentioned that he had 3 letters of intent, which have somehow not been transferred into an actual investment as of now. So what measures or strategies do you suggest for startups to navigate this challenge, and how can investors be encouraged to fulfill their commitments? What do you think is lacking in this entire system? Why are we not able to do it until now?
Thank you, Prachi. Where is the money for startups? I think that's a big question. And we, during the first presentation, we saw that lots of you voted access to finance or investment as the largest challenge that startups are facing. This was the same question that I had in mind when I came back to Nepal after my studies 6 years ago. 5 years back, I was just elected to a board of a commercial bank as a 28-year-old. I thought, I'm going to change a lot for startups. Then I found out there are a lot of hurdles, and it's really tough to work in an environment like this, but if you work with a sense of responsibility, you can really get through a lot of things. So Rajan sir already mentioned earlier that there are a lot of regulations that bind banks and financial institutions to actually invest huge amount in startups. But then what is also important is if we look at narratives, public narratives, things spoken by the government or even government documents, instruments being used in Nepal, they're very limited. And most of them talk about debt financing, and equity financing is a relatively new concept. We don't even talk about a lot of mezzanine financing that exists between debt and equity. A lot of them, a lot of policy makers, a lot of people, they're really interested in actually doing something for entrepreneurship. But I think it's a lack of understanding. I'm just giving you a background just to set a context to where we are. It's a lack of of understanding about the instruments that are available and that are required by companies at each stage of their growth. Not everyone requires equity and not everyone requires debt, right? So I think that understanding is lacking. And with that in mind, we ventured out to set up a fund management company and had a really unique model whereby banks, including government banks, two large government banks and two large commercial banks, high net worth individuals, investors like Rajan sir himself, Lakshmi Bank. So they all came in with us and we set up a fund management company. And I'll tell you about my problem when we started to raise funds, because not just our fund, we have to leverage funds from other investors, right? So I remember a couple of years back, I went to some DFIs and said, hey, we've set up a fund, we really want to do something great, support startups. And they said, do you really have the license, regulatory, have you fulfilled the regulatory requirement, and will you get the license or not? That was a big question for us because we really wanted to come under the government radar, under the Securities Board Nepal. And there was not much trust that this is going to happen, but we really worked through and then we got the license. And again, when I went back, I was questioned, are you going to get permission to raise funds? Then again, we went, lobbied, and pushed, and we got permission. And as mentioned earlier, right now Nepali fund managers have been given permission to raise about 30 billion Nepali rupees, and probably 1/3 of that has been raised already. And then after that, the question was, who will invest in your entity? The banks, they're restricted. There's no regulation in insurance companies whereby they can. The word private equity venture capital is not even written in insurance investment guidelines. So that was another challenge. But then about 3 months back, that was changed and we really pushed hard for it. And now the other question that we have is, your private equity fund is being taxed. So there's double taxation. And who's going to invest in that? So we're really hopeful that the budget this year will pass that as well. So in Nepal, doing something, this is an exciting kind of environment because not everything has been done, but then that also comes with a set of challenges that you have to, you have to go and build the road, right? So, but then we've navigated the challenges, and now we are raising funds. We've raised half of 3 billion fund that we've been given permission to, and are deploying 10% of that to startups as well. And now coming back to your question regarding investors' commitment and why no follow-up through. I remember an event that happened a couple of years back in this same hall, I think. We were there in the stage, we committed, give out LOIs, and then there were great pitches as well. But then not many investments happened. And now I can reflect back, what happened, who's wrong, or is there no, is the system wrong, or is it some weaknesses on our part as fund or startups? What we realized was a lot of homework needs to be done before you announce such kind of intent to invest. So we did we looked at the pitches, it looked great, but frankly not all, when we went to due diligence, not the numbers were not matching. There were a lot of work that needed to be done by the startups, and some of them who actually wanted the fund publicly didn't really require the fund when we approached them, because that was not a requirement for the fund itself. On our part as well, perhaps we are not as ready with the fund then, but then now we are in a much better condition. So I think there's a lot to do on both part. But learning from that, what we did was we ran an accelerator program in one of the provinces, Koshi province, focusing on one sector, agriculture sector, a year back. And I have to say, we learned a lot from our previous experience, and we brought in partners who, so we brought in the provincial FNCCI chapter, so that the thinking was they could act as a business development center, as Raj sir was earlier mentioning, in the longer run. We also brought in a development partner called Sahaj, I think it was funded by Swiss Embassy, and they invested about 47% into the accelerator program. We invested 53% is. So out of 50 companies that applied, we worked with 10 companies very thoroughly. So, we did due diligence, had mentorship sessions, and took banks and private equity firms from Kathmandu to there, gave them one-to-one sessions. So they were mentored really well. But out of that as well, only we were able to, some of them didn't actually require equity, because equity is not a cheap form of capital. It's more expensive than debt. That's, sometimes we get into that mindset that it's free money. It's not. And then now, then we selected 3 companies. Right now, we're in the final stage of investing, co-investing along with another private equity in one company. It's not an easy job. There's a lot of hard work required, and this is a new asset class for us. We have to get trust from banks, financial institution, insurance. Otherwise some might say, okay, it's another cooperative Ponzi scheme. So these things are there. So we really need to build that trust, and I think the way to do that is slowly and steadily, gradually. As I said earlier, the first fund we are committing about 10% of the fund size to startups, but it will take time. Maybe from that, from our second fund, we can gradually increase that in the future. There will be a lot of lessons for us to learn as well. And parallelly, we are also working on investment readiness of the companies as well. So I think I don't see a lot of people working on building a pipeline of companies. A lot of private equity firms right now, domestic or even supported by DFIs, they're investing in a lot of late stage companies. Yes, there are a few examples whereby they've invested in early stage as VC funds, but most of them go to late stage investing. So we're also focusing on creating a pipeline of investors. So, I am quite positive. So hopefully you'll get that answer soon once we sign investment agreements and hand out investment checks to some startups. Maybe next year we can talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know why this question was so important is because there's a major gap between the investors and startups. While the startups feel that the investors don't want to invest, there's a different story altogether which had to come out. There are a lot of questions that are still being answered on their front also, and they're doing everything in their capacity to make it work. So I think the balance needs to be there, that information flow needs to be there, because I really feel being an advocate in this field, I see that the information is majorly missing. So yes, thank you so much for enlightening, and I hope others get to know and they know that there's a lot of work being done there, and there is money. So youth don't need to go out. They can wait, potentially create their startup and have it come through. Following the same conversation, Mr. Suman, I want to come back to you. I would want you to shed some light on sweat equity, which, something like how can Nepali investors effectively leverage sweat equity agreements to overcome investment restrictions and foster technology transfer agreements with foreign companies, which may also, shed some light on what Mr. Raj spoke about, how we cannot take money out?
Yes, this is a very interesting topic. I think we all need to start having a discourse on, and maybe I would like to highlight a basic thing. There's an Investment Restriction Act 1969, Vaideshik Lagani Pratibandha in 2021. This act was being formed much before, like most of us here was born, right? The whole act talks about Nepali and a Nepali company are prohibited to invest outside. Somebody at that point of time, because it was a very closed economy, so created that particular act saying that we need to look inward. Now, stage has come where, especially on the IT side, especially on the startup side, or even on the fintech side, Nepalese companies have become capable enough to go out. Like there are, in various countries, there are partners who wants to have this particular platform being taken up, and we can start. It'll be just the other way around. Like you've heard about Fuse Machine, you've heard about Cloud Factory. They're established in US or outside, and then Nepal is a cost center. It can just be the other way around. Like for example, for my company, Upai, so we've got a partner found in Sri Lanka. Right? What he says is like, what you guys are doing amazing. Like, can we take the technology transfer there? And by doing that, we can give you a shares of whatever we've agreed upon, right? The agreement is almost locked in. Now the issue is, can I take a sweat equity in that particular country? No. That's what the act restricts. And as a Nepali citizen and a Nepali company, what I'm asking for the government is, without changing my citizenship, can I be a proud Nepali to own that shares there? Whatever is needed, whatever documentation or registration is needed here in Nepal, can you make that provision for us? I'm not taking out a single penny out of this country. All I'm trying to do is sell our technology or transfer our technology, transfer our skills, and own that shares. And if I do that, in another 5 years' time, if that venture goes really well, I can bring in $5 million. If I sell that technology right now, I'll just be getting $1,000 or $10,000. Now, that's where the difference is. And now Nepali company is being able to capable of that. I can share you an example. I sit in as a CNI IT council. I took a delegation to one of the government office and said them like, this is what we are trying to do. The first question they asked was like, are you guys capable enough? Now that's where the government understanding is. They feel that we are still much lower or much at a very low level than what the other global counterparts are. That's not true. Like if you take example of PhonePe, they would be able to start something like PhonePe or F1Soft or eSeva anywhere in the world. Maybe not in the developed countries, but in the emerging countries, like in Africa, like in South Asia, or even in Southeast Asia. This is something what Nepali youth can be able to do it. Now, if that restriction is gone out, where we are saying we're not taking out the money, and good part is before the investment summit, there was a revision in the FITA, which is the Foreign Transfer Technology Act, which now allows the company to actually do a technology transfer outside Nepal, which is a good thing, which is very, very good thing. And it also says that by doing that, you can actually create a branch in that particular country. So which is, again, a good thing. Now, 2 steps has been taken. Now, by doing that technology transfer out of Nepal, right, and setting up a branch there, either you bring in the money home as purely a commercial transaction, or you own a shares and retain that wealth there itself in terms which has been converted from a technology in terms of an asset class where a dividend or a capital gain can come in at a later point of time. That last step, if that revision takes place, then see how it will happen. So there'll be companies registered outside, Nepali companies operating outside, which is listed in Nepali Stock Exchange, right? What you right now hear is like, okay, Fuse Machine is being listed in NASDAQ, right? But the cost center is here in Nepal. It'll just be the other way around. The profit center will be here, and the cost center might be out there. And that would change the entire ballgame. And coming back to that youth being deployed, or like youth leaving the countries, now imagine the job that you can create, not only here in Nepal, but the job that you're creating out in the other countries where the money is coming back to this country itself. And that change needs to happen, and this discourse, now this dialogue has to happen. We are from our side, from CNI side, or from FNCCI side, we are talking about it, but I think if you start giving that one small leeway, right, that would be the first step, and then going back to what Rajdai said, then put a cap in terms of how much money can you take it out, right? And everything being registered here. Because what needs to also be understood is the current youth and the youth who are leading these enterprise and the startup or the companies, we are very transparent. We don't want to hide anything that used to be done earlier, because always there was a thought process that businessmen would try to hide things. That's why you need to have a very strict regulation to ensure that nothing wrong happens. But here, it's a different culture altogether. It's a different people altogether. And that's something the government needs to understand. Maybe it may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but if we start talking about it, it'll happen someday, which would be something that we can all be proud of. Being a proud Nepali, I say not whispering, hush and hush, saying that, okay, I've got an investment there, but I can't disclose it here in Nepal because of that particular regulation. I can proudly say, I've got a company there. My company is listed in Nepal Stock Exchange. The general public who's actually put in the shares into this company can also proudly say that we've got operation in Sri Lanka or in Zambia or in Tanzania. And that's something that we want. And if we can do this, and if that intervention happens, right, I think that would be a great thing for us. And this is something that everybody needs to talk about. It's a national agenda that, especially for the youth,
Yes.
because else there's no reason for us, for the youth to stay here. Even, like simple example, not even for a big company, like I've got like for example, if somebody who's got a friend working in Germany, right? He's got an idea, says like, okay, let's do something, and this guy has a skill here, right? Now, how does he do a partnership with him? There's no way. What he says is, okay, you've got a skill here, I've got a market access, let's start a company in Germany, I'm going to give you a sweat equity, let's do this. Now, that possibility is not there. Then what will happen is, the guy who's sitting here in Nepal, who's gotten skill, has to move back to the Germany and do that business, and then change his nationalship, maybe be a part of that country's citizenship, and that's what is happening. And it is a very, very crucial point where now we need to change things. And we need to, and I think this lobby and this advocacy has to happen in the government, saying that give us that leeway, and it is the government responsibility to make us feel that we are a Nepali citizen and not change our citizenship.
What a proud moment would that be if there's a Nepali company that has its sweat equity somewhere else. This is a homework we all should do today. Read about sweat equity, see how we can all together lobby for it, because this is something that is going to take Nepal, it's going to make Nepal beyond borders, and we need that now. Following this conversation, I would like to go to Mr. Gewali now. How crucial do you think is foreign direct investments in facilitating growth and expansion of startups in Nepal?
It's a difficult one to answer, actually, because I was just having a conversation with an expert on foreign investments from Sri Lanka recently, and she was actually telling me that a slightly restrictive environment that Nepal has is also preserving Nepal's resilience, and getting Nepalese to actually make a better effort at raising their own investments and trying to do a better job within the country itself. Because from Sri Lanka's example, everything opened up, and look at where they reached at a certain point, right? And I think she was talking from her own examples on that. But at the same time, I also agree that we should actually be loosening a few screws here, and actually letting investments come in at a certain level. And I think here's what I really think is that not all investments are at the scale of Hongji cement. It doesn't have to be, right? A lot of investments that are required in Nepal are very micro level. And I think the pandemic has really shown us how micro level businesses are more resilient than actually the standard SME that everybody talks about, which is close to about $1 million. Because those are reliant on very heavy financial instruments, on banks, and when a crisis happens, they fail really miserably, and then the governments have to step in. And this is exactly what happened in Europe. That's exactly, and Europe, the governments in Europe are not very happy with that. They had a lot of money, and they had to pay back, and it's created a sort of dependence, which does not exist in Nepal, actually, until now. We talk a lot about the government doing things, but most of the time, most Nepalese will just do it ourselves. And that's because we work micro. And now, to actually use that strength, I think what we really need is to open it up to smaller investments. And smaller investments, I know the government does not really want it because the caps are quite high right now. I think some sectors are getting relaxed, but the caps are quite high. But if that is the case, then I think within the government or through the development community that is there, the base level investments should be done so that companies can be ready for the bigger investments, right? And if we do it like that, I think we have the opportunity to actually reach a stage where larger investments, where the cap is to reach that, or the government has to open it up so smaller investments can come in. Especially in the IT scene, all you need is a laptop, really, most of the time, or a really good smartphone. This is not a multi-million-dollar, investment that is required. And many times, there are very small little injections that are required, which catalyze the innovations, right? And reach a certain stage by which investments can happen. So in answer to your question, yes, it's important, but depends, which is a very consultant answer. But yeah, it depends on how you do it. I think it's the the answer is in the practice of how we actually take it from a custom, case-to-case basis.
Very true. I think we have a very restrictive economy. I think we really need to work on that at this point of time. While I come back to the two ladies, I would like to now ask Mr. Paudel, as we anticipate the upcoming budget, how can innovative financing mechanisms be harnessed to bolster support for startups and small businesses in Nepal, particularly from the perspective of a venture capital?
Thank you. First, let me echo with what Sumanji said. I think that's a really, what we feel, this generation, we really want to be global while holding a Nepali citizenship and passport. I think that's a key agenda, as you said, that needs to be made our national agenda. As was mentioned earlier, there were some changes just before the investment summit, and FNCCI, our team, we really pushed hard for some changes, including defining startups, technology transfer outside, FDI relaxation. I think in that spirit, what we can say is the government has now understood, okay, startups are something, we need to focus on that. But again, it doesn't mean the changes that were made were full and final. There are a lot of things that needs to be changed. For example, we're thinking of building unicorns, but startups are defined as companies that have transactions only lower than 15 crore Nepalis, right? So that's already something that's restricting. In terms of upcoming budget, I think understanding about a range of financial products and instruments is key. I think that understanding should be reflected. I praise the development partners community, because now the bureaucrats, the politicians, they've started to speak words such as green finance, impact fund. So they have they've started to talk about that, right? But then not with full understanding. So I think if the budget can reflect the range of financial instruments that are available for startups and for companies to grow, I think that will be a key factor. And number two, as I mentioned earlier, companies at different stages of growth require different things. So, a young company might require a bit more easy finance from friends, families, or even angel investors. So for that, for example, the government could say, okay, if a corporate invests in a startup, then that can be a deductible for taxation purposes, right? So that can open up a plethora of investment from corporates to for startups. And number two, we've seen the government announce startup fund every year there's startup fund announced, the amount is raised, but where is the problem? I'll tell you where's the problem. What is done is, after that's announced, the MOF, Ministry of Finance and National Planning Commission comes up with a procedure saying, okay, this is the procedure to give out financing from startup fund to startups. Then who's on that panel or list of people who gives out fund? It's typically chaired by honorable member of National Planning Commission along with some bureaucrats, right? And how can we expect investment decision to be made without consulting people who are actively doing investment day in and day out? That's not the model. And and typically how it ends is in the form of accessible fines. For example, like they charge only small amount of interest and then it goes to startups. We don't know where it gets used, and again next year they have to come up with another startup fund. But then if you look globally, there are models whereby countries, they create funds and they partner with private sectors, and that's contracted out on a management contracting model to private sector to not just leverage, to not just use that fund, but also leverage further funds, so that it becomes a revolving fund, and there we can have development partners come in as providing TA support or first loss guarantee of equity, those sort of things, right? So we've been telling this every year to every minister, to every finance minister who comes. last week when I was at Ministry of Finance, they seem to be positive, but always the doubt remains on how the operation guidelines of that fund will be made. And if there's even 1 rupees of government fund going into one basket, typically you'll have bureaucrats who want to take decision on that, right? So that change of mindset needs to be there. It can only be possible when I see a lot of development partners, representation from a lot of embassies. So when you push for that, we are more than happy to match government funding along with your support. Where we can do that immediately. So I think that's sort of thing that needs to be reflected in the budget. In terms of how we can make it easy for venture capital and private equity, right now the challenge is raising funds. And why is that a challenge? Because just to give you an example, insurance, so after the changes last 3 months ago, insurance companies can now invest 1.5% of their total investment into PEVC asset class, right? So, yeah. Which is very low. Compare that with investment companies, which invest in stock market and real estate and other sectors. The cap is 10%. So the 1.5% opened up about, I think about 9 billion Nepali rupees equity that can be mobilized through PVC funds. Imagine if you just raise that to 10%. It will open up 63 billion, about 63 billion Nepali rupees. Multiply that, if you leverage that with a loan, that will be, huge, right? So I think small changes like that. Or say right now mutual fund entities, they get passed through taxation for taxation purpose. The entities are not taxed. That money is being invested in stock market. But private equity, venture capital funds, even the entity itself is taxed. It's not an exciting asset for banks, financial institutions, right? So hopefully, we think that that will be changed, and following that, maybe the monetary policy will do some relaxation in terms of provisioning the amount. So in addition to that, I think running business development services with a host of private sector institutions, growth centers, accelerators, incubators, so I think that will really change things, because we need to work a lot on investment readiness. So these are some of the areas that we can work with. And again, echoing with what Sumanji said, if you allow us to, say for example, for us to be domiciled in Middle East, say for example in Dubai or Singapore, funds can be raised very easily, right, compared to here. So I think that will also help to bring in a lot of investment for our startups here in Nepal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We also have Mr. Umesh Gupta with us here today. So I do know that this time the startup loan that has been promised by the government is going to go through in the next 2 weeks, I assume. So hopefully you'll have to match that amount very soon, because it will go through. Thank you so much. That were really good points that were raised. I would like to now raise my question to Ms. Nikita Rajbhandari. How do you think Nepal can create a supportive environment for tech-based startups, since you're in a tech startup yourself?
Before I begin to answer the question, I would like to slightly plug in my business here. So I am a tech entrepreneur. We have a software called Zite. It's a project monitoring and management platform. We are 3 co-founders. It's me, Justin Hensrath, who is based in Bangkok in our HQ, and Arun Bandari. So we started this company in 2020, right around when we were having the COVID sort of lockdowns. Fortunately, since we worked before this at an innovation program for the UN, we already had experience working with softwares like that. We had rolled out a global platform in 16 different country offices, UN offices, and sort of that those contacts and goodwill that we had, we could leverage that while we started this company in 2020. At the moment, Zite has been rolled out and scaled up in 12 different countries, and we are working in really impactful projects. Like, for instance, one of the projects that we're working in is in Bangladesh, one of our first projects. It is in Cox's Bazar with UN IOM, and we are working there in terms of managing campsites for the Rohingya refugee crisis. We've always wanted to work in projects where there are a lot of humanitarian impacts, so social impacts, and we choose kind of projects that have some form of elements to either climate change or environment, So the way we work around is we have registered as a benefit corporation.
And here we have partnered with a local sort of implementing company, which is basically founded by one of our co-founders, Arun Bandari. And I could totally echo with what Sumanji mentioned about, having sweat equity sort of regulations, because for us also it has been very difficult in terms of vesting our shares, because we cannot sort of own shares in an international company, right? We have registered in Colorado as a benefit corporation, but we're still trying to figure out ways to sort of like how we vest the shares for me and Arun in the company. So at the moment, all of our contracts and all of our documents have been made through Naxa, our partnering and implementing company, and that's how we're working. And it's been really hard, specifically because we're not a startup just working inside the Nepal landscape. We're working globally in so many countries, so it becomes very difficult for us when the regulations are so restrictive, right? So yeah, we're trying to work around, and we're trying to sort of see if there are ways where we can sort of work with the government in terms of, working our projects, signing our contracts, getting in money, paying our employees. That has been a real challenge. Also in terms of like, let's say, even simple things like company registrations are so hard in Nepal. Like when we started this company in Colorado, it took us 1 day. We registered our company in 1 day, and it was all online. I mean, here in Nepal, if we want to start a company, we have to go from this door to that door, yo numberबाट यहाँ जानु, त्यहाँबाट त्यहाँ जानु. Are you getting my point? So it is very difficult, and all of these sort of like policies are not very supportive for startups, for young entrepreneurs who are out there, who have great ideas, and they want to sort of like start their company, but the regulatory sort of system is so restrictive that even before starting my company, I'm already like discouraged, right? So sort of like making sure these elements of, simple things like taxation or starting a company or registering a company, paying people, shares, all of these things should be made very simple so that, young people who don't have an idea about legal frameworks can actually sort of attempt of even starting these companies, right? Another challenge that I think as a tech entrepreneur I have faced, and an unpopular opinion, but it's quite frustrating that in Nepal, I have also personally participated in a lot of competitions, mentorship programs, challenges. I've won a couple as well. But in the Nepal sort of investee ecosystem, it's always a couple of different startups revolving around these sort of challenges, right? It's the same name coming forth again and again. Why is that? I mean, why aren't we trying to sort of like, promote new ideas? They already have made a mark, right? So we should sort of try to bring in new ideas, bring in new companies, bring in new people in the system, rather than, handing over the title to the same company again and again. I really don't see the point in that. For us as a tech startup, it was very interesting when we sort of like started this company. We were a part of this innovation lab at World Vision. When we started this, we started a beta testing phase, and it was one of the best accelerator programs, one of the best innovation lab we have sort of collaborated with. The networking that they provided was really helpful for us in terms of taking our MVP into a robust sort of product, right? But that sort of accelerator or mentorship program in Nepal is pretty much lacking, specifically from the government end side. I've read a couple of documents and reports where the government have like pledged challenge funds or different kinds of policies where they pledged in establishing one sort of accelerator in each province, which is just on paper. It has never been materialized, right? I mean, that sort of ecosystem, that sort of resource, that sort of service is so important in terms of encouraging these young minds, right? And even though there are a couple of private sector sort of innovation labs, we were also based on a couple, they lack sort of the funding and support that they should be getting from the government in terms of, the kind of project they're trying to carry out. Like simple things like having ergonomic furnitures, like having dedicated meeting rooms, even that isn't available in a lot of these spaces, right? Co-working spaces should have these, right? There are a lot of ideas they want to do so well in the industry, but they don't have the funding to even rent a space. So having a co-working space that they can rent out in a very like subsidized amount is so important. These are like really simple steps. You don't have to do like really groundbreaking changes. You can just, you know, baby steps towards helping these entrepreneurs are required. For our company personally, when we enrolled in a couple of these accelerator programs in Nepal, we felt that we grew way more than the program, the services that they were providing, the support that they were providing, right? Because we wanted to scale globally, and a lot of these programs are very nationalist, and they're very like only focused on like local sort of scaling. You know, if there's like Uber globally, Uber Eats Nepal. You know, that's their vision. And our vision grew way bigger than the lab, and we had to sort of slowly do an exit. So yeah, I think to just like summarize my points, the first point, we have to sort of make these policies, these sort of like registration processes, legal processes, we should simplify them. And then we should also start thinking about establishing like good accelerator programs, good incubation centers, labs within the country supporting these startups. So yeah, that's what I feel.
Thank you so much. So the gist basically is ease of doing business, capacity building. I think if we can crack a few of those, like you said, baby steps, and I think it would be through. Ms. Shrestha, I would like to couple two questions for you at this point of time. What kind of support needed from the government agencies to facilitate small businesses to expand their markets in the and globally? And what do you think are the challenges that women-led businesses are facing in Nepal at this point of time?
E-commerce is one of the most lucrative way to sell products worldwide. And Nepal's regulation does not support this at this point. Two most important points would be logistic. To send your products abroad is so difficult. And that makes Nepalese products very less competitive. And more importantly, no quick payment gateways, like we were talking about, right? We cannot even accept credit cards online. We don't have PayPal, so we don't have Apple Pay. And that really restricts us to have a transaction with our customers. The only way to accept payment is SWIFT codes and wire transfers. If you talk about me, none of my customers are ready to do that, to go through that hassle, you know. So another thing that is preventing Nepal to go global is, like you said, Sumandai, the Investment Restriction Act. Nepalese are not allowed to own a business abroad. And if GG Visa is successful, why am I not being able to have a GG Visa USA or GG Visa UAE? Why am I forced to now find a partner to send my products? That again will restrict foreign currency to come to Nepal. And with this, I mean, I'm forced to license my products, and then who am I? I'm just a supplier to these businesses. And it cuts Nepal completely out of the equation again. Those are the things that I think government needs to lobby. And like Nikita said, I was also trying to talk about Stanford Seed. I'm so impressed with these programs. Stanford Seed, you know, has a program that partners with entrepreneurs in Africa and South Asia. If government can do something of that sort, it would be extremely helpful for micro-level businesses to go to macro enterprises. And Nikita said another point, which I strongly believe, the bureaucratic hassles. Apparently, not apparently, I know so. It takes about 19 procedures to register a company and 27 working days. For startups and businesses, if the government simplify this process, it would be of a great help. Now, coming back to your second question, biggest problem I feel that the women-led business are facing is social-cultural. I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but balancing between work life and personal life is a lot. And especially with male migration, women needs to do everything themselves. Don't forget, women are mothers, daughter-in-laws, daughters, wives. With this comes a lot of responsibilities, a lot of expectations and pressure. And you know, in Nepal, we have lots of festivals, lots of pujas, and all these are prepared and performed by the women. And you know, and I personally, with 2 kids, it's very difficult to do my personal and work. I juggle between that, and I feel like I'm not giving 100% to either. And that's probably why there are lots of dropouts from the workforce after they're married and after they have kids. Another thing is the financial support. In general, it's so difficult, oh no, not difficult, impossible to get a loan if there is no collateral. And our social structure is so that the women has not many things under their names. All the collaterals are mostly with the male. That again limits the women with their financial background. Another thing is representation of women in women entrepreneurs. The representation is so low that they're not taken seriously, and I've been witnessing this myself. For example, for Gigi Visha, I had to prove myself for 1 whole year for my vendors to take me seriously. Only after 1 whole year, and then, you know, ordering frequently in a larger quantity, they took me as one of the customer. So I think these are the few problems that we've been facing as women-led companies.
Thank you so much. I assume we have a time restriction and I wouldn't be able to ask any further questions, but we need to realize in 1 hour we've covered quite a few. While we've covered a lot of pros, we've covered a lot of cons. We need to take very baby steps to bring our startup ecosystem, ease of doing business, transactional support, capacity building, easing out the investment restrictions, increasing knowledge from lack of knowledge to at least some knowledge, policy regulations, bureaucratic hassles, sweat equity, let's learn about that, like I said, FDI, and how we do it, innovative financing, different types of financial instruments that are available for startups and how we can make them aware of that they are available here, collaterals for women and representations of women. I think these are a few points. If we touch upon it, a little more, it might just take an entire day. But I think we've covered a lot. We've left you some thoughts to stay with. At the same time, I know we are, in our capacity, doing a lot. There's a lot of support from the government also. There's a lot that's being done. CNI, FNCCI, and a lot of other private sectors have also been made a part of it. And I'm sure this time the startups are going to get their loan. So let's be hopeful. And I'm sure we'll go through it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Agarwal and the entire team. Can we have a round of applause for them again? That was truly a very honest depiction of exactly what the startup scene is like in Nepal right now. On that note, I have to ask you if there are any questions from the audience. We haven't seen a show of hands yet, but I'm expecting quite a few people to have questions. If you want to ask a question, kindly raise your hand. We'll have somebody come with a cue card for you. Please fill in your question there, and then I'll bring that forward to the panelists. On that note, I also want to mention, not all is lost. We did hear a lot of honest depictions of the startup scene in Nepal, but yesterday we got news that 2 female entrepreneurs from Nepal, both Forbes 30 Under 30 winners now, Shreya Giri for Happy Minds and Kajol Jain for Vegan Dairy Nepal, have been listed on the Forbes 30 Under 30. That's just yesterday. And this should be very encouraging news for us. And this is something that we can truly take back as a true example and an epitome of resilience, where women, startup founders, are going out there and doing wonderful things and truly spreading their shine in the world. On that note, if you have any questions, this is a great time to raise your hand. Please ensure that you write in your questions on the cue card. You can choose to remain anonymous, but if you do wish, we will announce your name if that's required. I can see a few hands raised right at the back. So there. At the back. At the back. Yeah. I'll quickly sift through and filter through the questions before we put them forward to the panelists and the moderator. On that note, I'd also like the tech team to please pull out the Mentimeter, because we're going to take a moment right here and quickly answer the same question that we answered right at the beginning of this session. Could we have the Mentimeter on the screen, please? And I want the audience members to kindly go back to menti.com, enter the code that we'll see shortly on the screen, and answer the question again. And this is only for the purpose of us to understand whether there's been a genuine transformation, a genuine change in the way we think about the same question now in comparison to before. Please go to menti.com. The code this time is 4304871. Go to menti.com. You can put in the code 4304741. And now you're going to answer the same question again. The question is, in your opinion, which measure is most important for nurturing Nepal startups? The first option is accessible funding channels. Second, robust mentorship schemes. Third, efficient regulatory reforms. And fourth, diversified networking opportunities. I'm going to keep this live for 1 minute, after which we'll request any one of our panelists to kindly comment on what we saw before and what we saw after, if there is a change at all. I'm going to keep the Menti on for another 30 seconds. Please register your answers. Suddenly, everyone seems to have forgotten about funding, no? Could I request for the tech team to stop accepting any more answers into the Menti and pull out the previous results? So we'll do a comparative study of what was signed in earlier and what we got right now. Could we just have the previous results, please? So this is the before, and then can we have the after? Would anyone here on the panel like to comment on that?
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sumanji, yes.
Yeah. I think post the panel discussion, and especially what Manoj has said, in terms of, like, there's a need of access to finance, but for that, first thing is, like, the regulation has to be in place. Like, and that's where the channeling would come in. And I think that's where I think the audience also feels the same, in the sense, like, just because you say that you need a finance, but where is the whole policy and the changes that, or the reform that needs to happen, right? And that would actually channelize, the policy would channelize the funding so that there is an access to finance being created. I think that's what the opinion comes around to. But having said that, I'm a firm believer of what I say. I normally follow Bill Gurley. He's a VC in US who's backed up Uber. He says regulation is a friend of an incumbent, right? So if you only have a regulation which does not, which remains permanent, then it's going to favor somebody who's actually creating it, or somebody who wants that regulation to be in place, right? Right now, we need that regulation, and that's what everybody feels about it. We need that regulation to channelize so that startup scene is being taken care of. But if it is permanent, then only few of the people is going to benefit out of it. So the regulation needs to be in such a way that it fades away over a period of time. I think that's what I need to say. Thanks.
Okay. Would you like to contribute as well, sir?
It's very interesting to see the results. I think the key point here is there's a lot of money domestically available domestically that can be mobilized. These money, they can be converted from fixed deposits at bank to VC investment into startups. investment in just large infrastructure project from a government pension fund to some risky investments for promoting entrepreneurship, right? So, but then for that, there are some regulatory reforms that's required. It's not huge, and these will happen. We're not saying that, okay, once these are in place, then we'll start investing. That's not the case, and that hasn't been the case in the last 2 years. We need to work parallelly while we also push for these regulatory reforms. And I think tying up the right kind of finance with the need of the company's growth stage is really important. So I think if we can do that, I see a lot of solutions right now in this room. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, I was actually quite surprised because I thought the access to finance would go down quite a lot. And I think the mentorship would have gone up. But the reason why was because we've talked billions out here. There's billions that have been talked, that is accessible, that is there, could be accessed, right? But we don't have the regulatory framework and we don't have the mentorship for it. So I would have actually seen like a hill. That is what I would have thought would have come out, actually. But I think if we look at it in totality, all the three go hand in hand. And if the three go hand in hand, the regulatory framework is there, the mentorship is there, and the finance is there, and I think those three will probably go hand in hand. So I think we should not look at it just on face value, but I think overall, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Correct, makes sense. Thank you so much for your opinions on that. For me, it was quite eye-opening, in fact, to see that almost immediate shift in perspective. And I think that truly is the purpose of panel discussions like this, is to start conversations and to allow people to think in a different way. On that note, I'm coming to your questions. We received quite a few questions this time, but I'm going to pull out just 2 or 3 of them. Interestingly, all are about women entrepreneurs, and that makes me really happy and proud. First question to Nikita ji, and the question is, what were your challenges as a female tech founder in Nepal?
Oh, wow. Where do I begin?
This could be a book, no?
There are a lot of challenges. Even before starting my company, when I was working for the humanitarian sector, I was a big sort of victim of imposter syndrome. And that was because the way people used to treat me, right? Whenever I used to go attend meetings at ministries or government offices, the table would be full of men. And I would be the only young sort of, program coordinator trying to sort of teach them something. And my opinion will always be scrutinized. And that's something that I've faced for years in this industry, right? And then later, when I started my own business, it was the same. Every time I visit, and all of these projects that I work with, all of the project managers and the leaders were 40 plus 50-plus-year-old men. And they would always not take me seriously. I think that was where it started, right? Even before that, I think for women in Nepal and Southeast Asia, it's very difficult for us to sort of like take on leadership positions because of the way we are also raised. Our upbringing also brings a lot of issues, right? To give you an example, for instance, let's say there's a son and a daughter in a family, and your parents need to do some sort of banking errands or work, right? You would always assign and allocate that to your son rather than your daughter, right? So that sort of financial literacy and independence is not taught to us, right? From the very ground up. I haven't faced that because we are 2 siblings of sisters, so I was the elder one, I had to take care of everything. But I think mostly in most of the sort of families, this is a very significant issue, right? So yeah, I've faced a lot of challenges, specifically because of the way we are treated as second-class citizens. And with time, we sort of like believe that, right? If you look after the mayoral candidacy, you can see that women apply for deputy mayors more than for mayors. Why not for mayors? Why didn't you apply for the mayoral candidacy? Because we already feel that we come second to our male counterparts, right? That's the big issue here in Nepal, and I was a victim of it as well. It took me a lot of experience, learning to come out of it and sort of like occupy space. I'm here today speaking. I was very nervous before I started this. I was just telling my friend Trisha and Adish, I'm like, you know, I'm really, really nervous. I don't know what am I going to speak. But then, yeah, it takes practice. You have to be out there. You have to sort of occupy space. You have to sort of put yourself out there. That is how you learn, and that is how I learned. So yeah, I think I'll just keep it short. Otherwise, I'll just keep on going on this. So.
Thank you for that. It's very interesting that you also spoke about the leadership ambition gap that women face because of risk aversion that comes in early childhood onwards. Okay, the next question that I have is for Ms. Shrestha, and the question is, as a women entrepreneur, what are the things we should avoid, and who should we consult? Maybe who can we ask for mentorship is more the question.
The mentorship I asked for my husband. I believe in him. He's proven himself, so I think mentorship I solely give to him. And what was the first question again?
What are the things we should avoid? As women entrepreneurs, what are the things we should avoid?
As women entrepreneurs, we should avoid being the second-class citizen here. Like Nikita said, we are preconditioned in our mind already that we probably are second, we are not capable enough. We step back a little bit, and that's also to how we are raised. Clearly, we are very respectful. We are very this and that and the other, and I think that needs to still be there. Our roots should still be very strong, but it needs to change a little bit as time goes on.
Thank you for that. Now, the third question is, again, it's not directed to anybody specifically, but it is about women entrepreneurship, and it says, 29% of SMEs in Nepal are led by women. Do we need special financing mechanisms to cater to this group of people? What are the special provisions that are needed to address women from a gender perspective? Anybody could take that up.
I'll keep it short, but I think, yeah, I truly believe in social upward movements and social action. I really believe in having quotas or systems specifically for women because of the historically, you know, we have been underrepresented for years now, right? I'll give you an example of a friend. Her name is Sonika Manandar. She was actually an award winner for CNI for one of the challenges, and I specifically remember the media sexism that happened with her. There was a front page photo of her. I don't want to name the minister that was handing over the sort of trophy to her, but then the text below that picture was this particular minister handing over the award to a female entrepreneur. Her name was not even mentioned there. She was the winner of the competition and her name wasn't there. Only the minister's name was there. And I was so angry. She's my friend and I know how hard she works, you know, promoting her business. So I think having quota systems, having like special sort of policies for women is very essential because of the way we have treated for years in the society, right? We have to have that. And once we reach that equity level or equality level with men, then we can go into like meritocracy or, you know, merit-based systems. But before that, we definitely need some special policies for women entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I want to quickly add something to this, which is not very specific there, but you know, there are a lot of women empowerment programs that are done. I don't understand why do women need empowerment? Why can't you be empowered yourself? Why do you need someone to tell you you can do this or you cannot do that? Why? The empowerment needs to come from within, and the day you are empowered, I think everything will fall for you the way to. Let's start there.
Okay, I like that there are two completely different points of view, and that's a great way to truly end this because the conversations are going to continue, although this panel discussion is going to end right here. And please take the break that we have after the remarks by Her Excellency Riina Rikka-Heikka, Ambassador of Finland to Nepal. After her remarks, you can take the conversation outside, and I'm sure that's going to be a great session. But for now, we would love to hear what Her Excellency has to say as she was observing this session, as she has got a lot of different perspectives to share on this topic. Your Excellency.
Good morning to you all. and especially good morning to our excellent panel. I think they need one round of applause still. I think I only have 3 minutes, so I have to be a bit limited in my reflections. But thank you for your excellent views, for your honest views, being brave, being bold, and being very concrete. A lot of food for thought for all of us, and I think you raised also really powerful and meaningful messages behind your work, what is driving you. You talked about commitment, passion, opportunities, especially for youth, working for Nepal and the people of Nepal, creativity, striving for added value, and impact, also a social impact, and talking about proudness. So I feel very humbled to reflect on these, since you are the change makers and you are really the leaders. And actually this brings me to my first reflection, which is about support. We all have different backgrounds here, different positions, different expertise, and we really have to pull our forces together to utilize the force that we have and support these kind of change makers. You talked also about the role of development partners, and development partners are indeed working in a very committed way in Nepal, including Finland. We have, for example, together with UN Women, supported women's livelihoods, the economic empowerment side as well, so we can discuss this later on, but really trying to make a difference and pitch in sort of the commitment that we can bring. But I'm really challenging everyone in this room to think about how I can support. And that brings me to the second reflection, which is what is needed. A lot of excellent ideas and very concrete ones, and the Mentimeter was supporting this sort of food for thought very well indeed. So a lot of talks about access to finance, special needs of women entrepreneurs, business networking. You talked about hand-holding mechanisms. You talked also about the range of instruments, the range that is needed, because there are no one-size-fits-all solutions for each companies, and a lot about mentoring. So really concrete issues, and I think my third reflection focuses very much of being concrete enough. It's only not about talking, it's about taking concrete action and concrete steps and showing commitment through this. And actually, as a donor, I always try to say that it's necessarily not always about the money. And actually, you brought it up as well. It's not only, if you want to think big, it's not only thinking big through money, but being creative and again, being committed. So these were just some reflections, but I was really amazed of your points and the necessity and how they go hand in hand. And I think one point what is needed, you talked a lot about bureaucracy and how the bureaucracy has to support, again, concrete action needed for that. So thank you everyone, and I wish you all the best.
Can we have a round of applause again for Her Excellency, for that fabulous summary and almost ending it on an inspiring note. On that note, I'd like to tell all of you that we're going to have a quick 20-25 minute break for tea. But before you go in for tea, please remember we do have a lot of amazing booths at the business fair that's happening to my left. Please do go, please do enjoy the business fair that's happening. And after that, you can come in for the tea, for the next session, which is going to be the 2 parallel sessions. I also want to request all the moderators and all the panelists and the moderator, please come together for a quick group photograph. Let's have another round of applause for this fabulous session.